Hello, welcome back to Public and the Police, where we tackle issues in the community, views of the police and inform the public. We speak to the actual officers and police staff from Bedfordshire Police in an aim to create discussion between the public and the police and trust with those who protect and serve our community. We are youth ambassadors from Attentive and are here every first Tuesday of the month between 8 and 9 p.m. And just before we go in, I'm your host, Kat, and
this is Ruth, and today we're going to be talking about domestic violence. And just as a little definition before we get into it, domestic abuse or violence is a harmful pattern of control within intimate relationships involving various forms of mistreatment, and it can have serious consequences which can affect the well-being and safety of those involved, most particularly the victims. So today we've got two guests, and I'm going to introduce them, or I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and explain us what they do and what their roles are.
Okay, well, thank you, Ruth and Kat. Really nice to meet you. My name's Zara Brown. I'm a Detective Chief Superintendent with Bedfordshire Police, and just a little bit about my role in the police service. I'm currently the Head of Public Protection, which covers domestic abuse, rape and serious sexual offending. I cover a wide range of crime teams as well within that forum, but particularly of importance today, because I know we're talking about BORG and domestic abuse in particular. That is a team that I currently oversee.
I'm Deb. I'm from an organisation, Queen's Women, an organisation called 9 Represent CIC, and we created the Abuse Victim Support Project in the late 1990s to bridge the gap, really. There was a lot of females, specifically women of colour, who were not being able to access services, so that's the reason why the Abuse Victim Support Project began. And then a couple of years ago, like 20 years later from when we started, we met actually with your former same role person, Dee Perkins, and we started the listening circles, and we've been doing that monthly ever since. And that's how our relationship really started, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and Deb's has been fundamental in some of the work that we've done within policing. But my honest views around all of this are that we need the community, we need the public, and we can't police our way out of these situations alone. We need to have some really grassroots foundation relationships with individuals like Deb's, who's really helped us catapult some of the changes that we've made within policing more recently, actually, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things have come, not like you say with Deb's, but it's with the organisation, the AVS projects and the Piece by Piece projects that's based on Leagrave Park. The women's listening circles are open to women of colour, because it is specifically about addressing those needs. And a specific section of that is the Caribbean female community, and one of the discussions where it was we had to go quite deep and actually try to explain exactly where the shortfalls were, what wasn't being addressed, what we weren't being listened to about, what our needs are, and how to respond to what our actual needs are as we identify them, as opposed to how they were being identified for us, and including amongst that actually understanding there is no one black culture. There are 33 Caribbean islands, there are 54 African countries, and having the understanding that, you approach someone as a human being first and understand where they are coming from, rather than ascribing, oh, they're black so they're this, or they could be that, or whatever the particular stereotype was. So we had the women out expressing their feelings quite rawly, because there was a lot of frustration and anger at these matters not being addressed, and we were listened. And these circles have branched out into other circles, and we're working in lots of different ways with the police. But one of the things that we think is really important is that the police are listening, and we actually want the community to speak to them and speak to them in real, authentic terms, like this is what our situation is, and without us actually telling the truth of what it is, actually really laying it out, they're not ever going to really understand what it is. There's no point glossing it over and making it seem like it might be a bit pretty. It has to be deep, and it has to be dirty sometimes, but you know, they're hearing us and actually taking the time to understand.
And that's been going on for a little while now.
Yeah, about 18 months actually.
Yeah,
yeah.
It has, and it's been a real journey actually, because at the start, you know, it was particularly difficult. I think you'll concur, Debs, with the listening circles in particular, building that trust and confidence with the community, with everything that is seen nationally over the media. It kind of permeates through policing. Whatever happens within a certain organisation, within a certain policing service. And so it was really difficult initially to have those conversations, but we've had them, and as Debs has alluded to, they were really difficult conversations, but we must have difficult conversations. Having difficult conversations with people must then allow us to change the way we do things, to think differently, and also to understand the people that we are policing and give them a voice to tell us what they think we need to do. And it's just about having that honest, upfront conversation that we have had.
And
now,
continuing
to have,
because it's not a one-shot deal.
No, absolutely
Can you
not.
tell us a bit about what 9 Red, like what specific matters you have brought up to Zara? Like what are the specific things? Can you tell our listeners a bit?
Well, one of the things that was really key and what we wanted to talk about is the discrimination of it. Okay, so there is many differences between that. We all speak about race and racism, and we all speak about sexism, but we never speak about racism, sexism, and the double impact that actually impacts black females. So that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure was brought out, the understanding the environment that people are engaging with the police in and having to report in. So that was one of the things that was really important. The other thing that we wanted to mention is there needs to be specific, very specific safeguarding procedures put in place when engaging with the community. And because it has been done with other communities, we felt that it was important that it was also applied to us in the way that it was applied, and applied realistically to all women across the board. It shouldn't be specific, but we do have our own cultural specific needs. They need to be recognised, they need to be addressed, and they need to be a priority rather than always fitting in underneath somebody else's something. So black female falls under racism, black female falls under sexism. The priority generally seems, for me in my experience, that when it's racism, it's more focused on the black male. When it's sexism, it's more focused on the white female. And we needed the understanding that there is gaps that black females are continually falling through, and that's one of the things that they need to understand, why we're falling through those gaps, why we're not reporting, why reporting can actually be more detrimental to us because there are not these systems in place. We also, I think it was Dee that started the scrutiny panel, so that was to ensure that we're actually looking and reviewing the cases that are coming through, and that's done like on a quarterly basis. They're randomly selected, but it's like, you know, having and ensuring that there are people of African and Caribbean descent who are on those scrutiny panels that are able to understand why this system did not work for us and being able to explain why it didn't work for us. So there's a few other projects that have rolled out of that as well. So we've got like the Be Heard project that, you know, we have our poetry projects and various different things along those lines, and then there are other projects that we've got in the works as well. But the main important thing that was really dynamic coming out of those first initial listening circles was just actually the recognition that we are falling through the gaps in the first place, why we're falling through the gaps, and actually having the conversation so that hearing the responses, what they would perceive as an appropriate response, and then being able to let them know why that is not appropriate, why that is not the one. And like I say, these are conversations that continually need to be had with as wide amount of people as possible, because every single person's experience is individual and unique to them, and there's no way to say that because this group of women had these experiences, these are the gaps, that because you've plugged those gaps, that doesn't mean you've plugged all the gaps that every black female might experience. So it always needs to have that constant communication, but it's about putting these things in place, and they come into place really quickly as well. But it's still, they're still in their infancy, they still grow and they still need to develop, but it really was about putting in these safeguarding policies. That was the first thing, because if you want more people from the Caribbean community to report, then you need to ensure that they are safe when they are reporting. and that was the priority at that time, and then other things flowed from that.
And I think that's a really good point, because we see underreporting of specific VOG offences, particularly rape and domestic abuse, from certain communities. And for me, I have some incredible teams around me who are so passionate about domestic abuse and rape investigation, and they want to make a difference. I have victim engagement officers that want to have that knowledge and understanding, and we continue to educate around this. But that piece around underreporting, we need to create that environment where people feel comfortable to come forward and report to Bedfordshire Police and let us know what's happening, and know that the support is there for them. But also part of the VOG agenda is having that perpetrator focus as well. We cannot take ourselves away from that, making sure that whatever is said to us, whatever we've got, the community have to have the confidence that we're going to do all of these things, and actually they have the trust and confidence that we will do all the things that Debs has just articulated in a way in which doesn't expose or breach confidence. And of course that's where we've had the help from 9 Red around our domestic abuse policy, where they sit on scrutiny panels and give us a voice around, like I said, we can't mark our own homework, we need somebody to tell us where we need to improve, or we've got areas of good practice, and that's working well. Like I say, it's on a journey, there's still so much to do. But at this moment in time, it's something that we're kind of really committed to continuing and branching out further to other communities as well.
I must also add, because this is actually how our relationship actually began, alongside everything that with MVOG, in terms of when it comes to the Caribbean community, we actually were introduced via WOSIP, which is Women in Colour in Policing, through Sergeant Sandra Smith. And so we're also, in terms of 9 Red, we're also working in projects with them, because we think it's really important that women of colour are empowered in the police, to retain in the police, but also get the promotions within the police. So it is very wonderful, and I'm very proud of the fact that we've had 2 chief superintendents who are females, but it would also be nice to see one that is of colour. And in order for that to occur, WOSIP is trying to engage women of colour in policing, is trying to engage with the community as much as possible as well, and women in general, to help to empower and support them. So we work on projects with WOSIP as well, because that's how this relationship started, and we always want to be able to make sure that we're supporting as much as possible, because in the end it benefits the community.
Yeah. And can you just quickly tell us, what is the current state of domestic abuse in Bedfordshire? What are you doing to tackle it? I think you just mentioned VOG. Can you tell our listeners what that stands for?
Yeah, so the VOG agenda is obviously the nationally recognised violence against women and girls, led by Maggie Blythe, but obviously supported by previous Detective Chief Superintendent in Bed, Steve Perkins, who is now the ACC on that project. And for us in Bedfordshire, we concentrate on the male violence against women and girls, because it disproportionately affects young women and girls. And we have a dedicated Emerald team for domestic abuse, and they are made up of a combination of detectives, PCs, investigation officers, and victim engagement officers. And the team are dedicated to investigating domestic abuse, high risk, repeat mediums, but also their support from the wider criminal investigation department around that as well at the moment. So that team in itself investigate a wide range of domestic abuse jobs, and there's an awful lot in there. Domestic abuse is obviously a topic of conversation which is high on the agenda, and as we move towards Christmas we always tend to see slight elevations.
Really? Why is that, towards Christmas?
It's just sometimes it's seasonal patterns that we see, specific times of the year, but some of the things that I think are impacting domestic abuse as well are societal issues that we're now seeing that fall from COVID, that were probably there before but have been exacerbated by COVID. The triggers of mental health as well combined. There are lots of different facets, and that's what makes domestic abuse very complicated in terms of the way in which it now plays out, in particular when children are involved. And therefore you've got that contextual safeguarding issue alongside a multi-layered, complicated and complex platform in some homes and environments that is brought on by the cost of living crisis and some of the struggles that we're seeing in society.
Okay. So we know that VAUG stands for Male Violence Against Women and Girls. Can you tell us a bit more about why that is? So why is it the term male violence against women and girls?
In Bedfordshire we concentrate on the male violence against women and girls because it disproportionately affects young girls and women, and we want to put emphasis on that fact. We're not suggesting for 1 second males are not victims, but we are obviously concentrating on the female side as well. And the male violence against women and girls, so I'm the strategic lead for that within Bedfordshire. We have scrutiny panels surrounding the VAUG agenda. We have a governance structure that's set up which has people from the local authorities, a wide range of individuals across sectors and across the organisation, because actually vulnerability touches lots of different corners of lots of different crimes, and when we look at violence it just spans across a wide range of departments within policing. But the focus around that is that we absolutely concentrate on certain crime types, but we also look at where we've got our hotspots, where we've got our concerning areas in terms of through analytics we concentrate on particular areas that are causing us for concern. For me, as a mother myself, you know, I have daughters that are to grow up in society, that I want them to feel safe. I want them to go out on a Friday and Saturday night knowing that they can go out and have fun and not be abused or be catcalled or be touched up in a bar, knowing that they can have a nice time without any of that happening. And my passion, alongside Debs, who is assisting, and other members of 9 Red and the wider communities, is to make sure that that is really clear within Bedfordshire. And so I'm really passionate about making that change with my teams, because it's something that pretty much permeates through everywhere you see you want to make the change. So that's the bit on MVOG.
I guess that's really good that you have Deborah then, who can also add in that other element of you know, bringing in race, because it is a problem also. It sounds like you have a really strong team. Can you, for our listeners who don't know, can you tell us a bit of the type of crimes that you may be dealing with?
Yeah, so it spans across rape, serious sexual offending, stalking and harassment, domestic abuse can span from, you know, serious assaults to forced marriage as well, honour-based abuse, forced marriage. We have within the Emerald team, we have a honour-based abuse dedicated small team that concentrate on that area as well, and a sergeant who has specialised in that for a significant period, and that training around that awareness around forced marriage is really key. But anything around can span across a wide range of offending.
Yeah, that sounds really great, and it sounds like you're really passionate about everything that you do, which we do love. You did mention the Emerald team. I myself am not really familiar with the abbreviations and everything that goes on within the force. I mean, I'm taught about it through Attentive, which I'm really lucky to know about, but can you just tell our listeners that don't know what the Emerald team is?
So the Emerald team is the domestic abuse team within Bedfordshire Police. They are pretty much the heart of domestic abuse. We have other teams that concentrate on domestic abuse as well at the moment, but the Emerald team are the DA team. They are the ones that the majority of the domestic abuse, especially the high risk and the medium repeats, go into.
I worked at the Emerald Centre for a little while as a crisis worker.
Can you tell us a bit about how the Emerald is set up?
Well, like this was in 2012, so this was when everything kind of erupted with Jimmy Savile and Operation U-Tree, and then I think it came out of Parliament, didn't it? Like everywhere where there was a mayor had to have a sexual assault referral centre, and ours is the Emerald Centre, and it had to be made up of particular parts. So when I went in at the time, it was specifically trained police officers that were specifically trained in dealing with like sexual and domestic violence and rape, and they actually had to do a course, and they did it with Limetree, and we all had to do it, like from judges all the way down. They did this course about understanding the impacts of domestic violence and all of the rest of it along those lines. So you had two specifically trained police officers. There would be a crisis worker who would be specifically trained, the FME would be there, and two police, FME, myself, and it would be, they would come into a really nice environment that was soft and it's kind of like serene and like a welcoming place. Then they would go into the sterilised room, which is not opened until the victim arrived, and then the FME examination would then take place, and there's a place there for them to have a shower, have a cup of tea and relax and kind of calm before they moved in. So that was the idea of it when I started in 2012, and it's been a long time since, so don't quote me on exactly what it looks like now.
Yeah, and that's it's a similar setup now. We obviously have our independent sexual violence advisors as well that are based across Bedfordshire, but predominantly at the SARC, which is our Emerald Centre, which is the Sexual Assault Referral Centre based mid-county in Bedfordshire. But we also have our independent domestic violence advisors as well that are really key to domestic abuse. So there are lots of people involved in the chain of events when a domestic abuse incident is reported.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the Emerald team is made up of different people from different organisations.
No.
I probably explained that
That's
wrong.
okay.
That's my fault.
So the Emerald Centre is slightly different from the Emerald team. The Emerald team is a team of police officers and investigation officers, as well as civilian victim engagement officers, who either investigate or look after victims of domestic abuse.
Okay, so there's an Emerald team and then centre.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Can I put this in a little bit of perspective as well? Because when you're hearing it, and I'm not meaning to be patronising in any way, but because you're both quite young, I think it's nice to have a little bit of the background of actually how these actual things came into place. So for me, and the reason why 9 Red began is because it was started by victims of domestic violence that were falling through the gaps. So we've actually seen the journey, how it's progressed from no services at all being available to the start of the Emerald service.
That, like, there was no services?
It's not that there was no services. There are services, but there were services available, but people fell through the gaps and could fall through the gaps and could not be detected, could be more invisible victims. I can't really describe it. When I say no services, that sounds really bad. I mean, when you look at what is here, it's a lot compared to what was, and especially like the idea of like the way in which the police are involved and the way in the police are actually trained to understanding. See, for me, it's the thing that came through with like the Limetree training, for example, is the things that where victims were being perceived as being lying because they were not able to clearly describe what time, what place, because there wasn't the understanding at that point of the adult thinking that occurs when you have a trauma. So it was a different environment, very much so to what it is now. So as much as there is a huge amount of work that needs to be done, from where we were in the 90s to where we have arrived currently, we have gone leaps and bounds. Yeah, just by virtue of the fact that having somebody willing to come in and speak to a lot of women that are angry with them about the way that they've historically been treated is massive, because even if you were in the room with an officer that wasn't actually responding, because they didn't take rape seriously at all. Not that they didn't take it seriously, but it was dismissed.
That they didn't really, like, it was something that they don't want to really hear about.
So we have absolutely moved on since the 90s. We've moved on since 5 years ago, and there in the past has been an awful lot of victim blaming, and a victim should never be blamed. And so, you know, the way in which we train our officers, our initial contact officers on the front line, the way they engage with victims of rape, all of that training, all of that conversation takes place, and we hold ourselves to account.
To the break with Public and the Police, and we're discussing domestic violence with Zara and Deborah. If you didn't catch them before, do you want to just quickly say your titles, and then we're going to go into the next question?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So my name's Zara Brown, I'm a Detective Chief Superintendent with Bedfordshire Police. I run the Public Protection and Criminal Investigation Department within Beds Police, which is made up of some key departments that we're talking about today through the BORG agenda: domestic abuse, which is my Emerald team, and rape and serious sexual offending, which is my rape team.
And I'm Deb, and I'm with 9 Represents, and we're talking about the Abuse Victim Support Project and how we work with the police, and how we would like the community to engage and speak more with the police about what our needs and wants and concerns are.
Yeah, great. So we were just talking about the Emerald team, and I think you also spoke about the Emerald Centre. So what I wanted to ask quickly is the Emerald Centre for the abuse victims? And can you explain some positive impacts that have come out of that?
Yeah, so the Emerald Centre is a sexual assault referral centre, which is in Bedfordshire, and it caters for children and adults who are victims of rape or serious sexual offending predominantly. And there is a self-referral mechanism there, so if you didn't want to report to the police, you could go there for an examination and have a conversation in confidence. We work really closely with the independent sexual violence advisors that work there as well, and it is somewhere where we take victims of this crime to secure and preserve evidence, essentially, but also to have conversations. Police officers are based out of there as well, or investigation officers that work within these teams. They're on site, so it's very collaborated in terms of, and fluid, where the officers work between Kempston, Luton and the SARC site. For my teams, there are wider teams obviously that work across Bedfordshire, but just for the public protection side. So that is the Emerald Centre SARC.
Okay, yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So there's an app called We Protect, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Would you like to tell us a bit about what it is, and how does the app itself enhance the support and safeguarding of victims, and how will the frontline officers be trained to use it effectively?
So we've only recently started using this app, actually more formally within the domestic abuse environment, and what it does do is it provides officers on the front line with advice and guidance around domestic abuse, and it has some referral services in there, it has some help and support lines within, but it primarily gives the guidance support around orders, interventions, and we work closely with DA Alliance in respect of that app to provide us with a dashboard to show us how many people that have been referred from the local policing patrol end through to services where there's a requirement to do that. So it's an extra layer of support and guidance that is provided to frontline officers. Though when I say frontline officers, officers that wear the uniform, that are out on the beat, but obviously the people in back office functions, detectives within the domestic abuse arena, Emerald team, will have that app should they need to use it. So it's something that the force is now using quite frequently.
Yeah, so just in terms of the app within it itself, so is there any procedures that the officers need to follow? So I know, for example, there is Go Wisely when it comes to stop and search. Is there something similar within the app as well? So when it comes to dealing with victims, are there any procedures that the officers need to follow?
There'll be some advice and guidance within there that will allow officers to look at certain things within the app, and it has some cross-referencing into some other procedures within policing that they can go to look at should they need to, and some support and advice for victims and referral lines. But other than that,
And
without actually look, it's like a knowledge check this now. Without actually looking at the app, I can only remember certain bits from.
Okay. That's really, I think that's good to have an app.
It's really effective actually.
That's good. And can you tell us a bit about Project Firefly?
Is this where you want me to come in?
Yeah, could you? You could probably say a bit more.
Can you introduce yourself, please? We're just bringing in some third person.
Hello, I am Lee. I'm from the Bedfordshire Police Media and Communications team, but I'm actually the Vulnerability Communications Lead, focusing on male violence against women and girls, domestic abuse, rape and serious sexual assault, and all those topics that Zara and Debs have covered off. And one of the projects that I've been a part of is Project Firefly, which is the nighttime economy response to ensuring that women are safe. And when I say nighttime economy, I mean sort of bars, clubs, and that sort of nighttime area. So that has involved sort of additional patrols and additional training. So our student hub has really sort of picked those up. Now we're coming into the new year on Friday. Just gone, we had a sort of a big operation in Bedford. We've got sort of Christmas and New Year coming up, so it's a really good time for our officers to sort of be out on the streets and ensuring like the safety of everyone, but more importantly the safety of women and that early intervention. There's also been a big piece of work with the licensing team, and they've worked with over 40, I think it was 47 when I last checked, 47 different premises to provide training to door staff and bar staff, so they know what to do if somebody sort of is getting some unwanted attention, or something's happened and they need support. But as well as that, it's sort of empowering bar staff and licensed premises to have that early intervention and engagement. So for example, if they see someone in a bar who is maybe drinking alone and hovering near a really drunk woman and sort of being quite predatory, and sort of empowering them just to walk over and be like, oh mate, like, is everything okay, like, you're having a good night, like, not expecting them to do the job with the police, but just having that early intervention that could prevent something more serious from happening. So it's about those sort of early signs and behaviours, and then also the communication side, which is where I come in, is a lot around that raising awareness of the early signs and behaviours that can lead on to more serious offending. So quite often in the meetings that Zara chairs, a rapist's first offence isn't rape. There are a series of behaviours that escalate over a period of time. That catcalling, that misogynistic behaviour, that low-level groping that people are like, oh, it didn't matter, he just touched me. That is where it can start. So it's just about that education through sort of Snapchat, posters, advertising, to sort of make people think that, and remind them that that behaviour is not okay, and it is okay to call your friends out and question that behaviour.
And Lee has lived and breathed Project Firefly for a little while, but there's lots of officers that are involved in some of the education pieces with bar staff, door staff, that are actually there we need them to be an upstander, we need them to call it out, we need them to be engaging with us, to tell us when things are happening, to link in through CCTV to make sure we're capturing what's going on within the Nighttime Economy Forum. And some of the presentations that have been put together by some of the officers within the Rape and Serious Sexual Offences team have been really good. They've gone around lots of key establishments within Bedfordshire to have those conversations, to raise that awareness, because sometimes we think that people actually know that work in these establishments, but they sometimes don't, and it's just that little bit of education, just that bit of reassurance that they know what to look for, that they know when to call it out, and actually who to go to when they do that.
Yeah, and that was really helpful, especially in terms that nightlife does play a big role in this, and violence as well. So how, side topic or different topic completely, how does the focus on vetting and professional standards within the police force contribute to a safer environment for victims?
Yeah, so, this is a really hot topic at the moment, isn't it, nationally, because of what's happened in the Met. Obviously, it's not unique to the Met. It like I say, things happen and permeate through policing, and it's about how we now look internally at our own organisations and conduct the relevant, vetting reviews of the people that are working within, or, doing stuff to ensure that we've got the right people working within policing, which we know hasn't always been the case. And what's really disappointing, I think, for somebody like myself that sits here today as a police officer, is that the stuff that's happened in the national media is not reflective of who I am, or who many of the people that sit around me day in, day out, who serve the public. And that's a really key message that I try and get across. And when we engage with communities like 9 Red, to make sure that they see the human side of police officers and know that we are absolutely, I speak for myself, trying to do the best job we possibly can for the public, but we can't have bad apples within policing. We just cannot have it, and therefore we need to make sure that we are ensuring we've got the right people serving the public, and I'm really quite passionate about that point, because it absolutely disappoints me every time I switch the news on when I see something else has been portrayed in the media about the public service, or particularly policing.
Yeah, I think that we on the very first police show, I remember we heard from some police officers, and they were saying they're equally as hurt about hearing the news of officers going against their duties and abusing their powers. So it's just another echo of that. Can you tell our listeners about the Bluebell support group and what is her initiative? Is it her or HER?
Yeah, so Bluebell is a internal working group. I'm one of 3 individuals that chairs that working group at the moment, and it's about calling out sexual and inappropriate behaviour within a workplace and supporting people that have the courage to come forward and report it. Obviously there are lines, there are boundaries, professional standards need to be made aware if there is somebody that's operating in that way within policing, of course they do. But it gives individuals, staff and officers, a confidential point of contact. And there is a group of women, men, a disparate group of individuals that work across the organisation who are SPOCs for different departments, different areas, branching out into single point of contact. Sorry, I'm doing the abbreviation thing again. Single point of contact in our Joint Protective Services area, in our Eastern region, within all of our crime teams, within our local policing function, community function. So there are people everywhere that people can go to if they need to report something, either if they've witnessed something within the working environment, or if they are a victim of inappropriate behaviour in general, or sexual inappropriate behaviour. And that's the same for the Domestic Abuse Forum, actually, because the domestic abuse, we've got single points of contacts, people that have had enhanced training across the organisation, about 40 now, that are embedded everywhere, who have got that enhanced training, that DA Matters training that we've rolled out, but with an extra layer, just to make sure that we've got subject matter experts within areas that people can go to. So everything is evolving. We're trying to better what we're doing all the time with what we've got, just so we can make sure that we're giving the public the best service possible.
Yeah, you did mention that there are experienced people to deal with these issues of if you were to report something.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about how we can find those people? So do we go on the police website and find the numbers, or is it a specific building that we need to go to?
What is that? Sorry, say that again. So for Bluebell.
Yeah, so Bluebell and any other organisations that we can, or that a victim or someone can report violence to.
So there's a wide range of reporting mechanisms online. If it's about people internally within the policing service, then there's obviously Crime Stoppers. There's a number of avenues that you can go down. But Bluebell itself, whilst doesn't have a confidential line, it has single points of contact around the organisation. Those people are accessible by way of contact numbers on our intranet site, on our directory, for people to be contacted. There's also lots of referral pathways as well for people who report crimes into us through our independent sexual violence advisors, or our IDVAs, our independent domestic violence advisors, to ensure that we're routing people to the right support and help that they need at that point.
Where would they go to? Is that...
Yeah, is there any way you can elaborate on that?
If there's a victim in the community that wants to make contact through one of the services, may not necessarily want to report, but they need access to services, where exactly would they go? I think that it... Yeah.
So, well, it depends what sort of service that they're after. So, obviously, the victim engagement officers, for example, if I could use that as an example, they would look at what exactly it is they need in terms of the support, and then there would be a list of services within that department that they would refer into. They might look wider, but yeah, without naming specific organisations. Say, for example, if there was somebody that wanted art therapy, who wanted to go into, say, Deb's World, we would look at ways in which we would get support from 9Med in order to help with that.
And you've also got the BHEAD access website that has links on there as well, so if people do not want to literally go call the police, they can go to the website and find avenues to different services on there as well. That's correct.
So in reporting instances, I know there's web chat, street safe tool and Crime Stoppers. Can you tell us a bit about these tools when talking about individuals reporting instances?
So what sort of things would you like to know?
Like, what are these tools? Web chat, street safe tool and Crime Stoppers.
So for example, Crime Stoppers is a confidential line where if somebody wants to report something anonymously, then that anonymous information would go into a particular organisation. But if it was about an officer or a member of staff within Bedfordshire Police, it would route through into our professional standards department. And what would then happen is they would look at the intelligence and information that's being presented around that individual, and then if there's a case or if there's some sort of concern around that individual, then there would be action taken.
Thank you.
Okay. So can you just tell us a bit about how the community can actively help support the police in tackling domestic abuse and promoting a safer environment for everyone?
That's to me, how the community can engage.
Yeah.
Okay, so where we're coming across with us is we literally have the women's listening circles, but we have a series of other circles that have come out of the circles. So we have Queendom, which is specifically for black females, and we also have the other 33, which is for black males, because there is different issues. Through these channels, we communicate with the police. So what gets raised in these are the issues, this is what's impacted us, this is what we feel is affecting us, these are the ways that we're unable to move forwards, this is the reason why we're not reporting, these are the reasons why we have whatever issues. These are fed through Bedfordshire Police, and so this is the way in which we want the community to engage in this particular way. Is like everyone that comes to that circle, their voice is heard and is taken into consideration, and things are moving forward. And what it is, for my particular point of view, where I'm coming from, is the more different voices that can be heard, the more likely we are to fill the gaps. We only know the gaps that we experience, and what we would like is for more people, especially people of colour, and especially black females, to actually be able to talk about what their concerns are, what their needs are. And the reason why I say specifically about black females is black females do not just worry about black females. Black females have to worry about their partners, husbands, sons, children, and in lots of different other complex ways that have nothing to do with domestic violence, but may have issues that intersect with the police. And so it's talking about all of these circumstances, issues, and raising them in a way that they are to protect and serve. And for us, it feels like it's time that we are served in a way that works for us. But in order for us to be served in a way that works for us, first we have to put it out on the table and tell them exactly what it is that we need, exactly the way in which we are being let down, exactly where the gaps are, exactly why we keep falling through the gaps. But it's only the people who fall through the gaps that can speak, and that's the reason why it needs to be in the grassroots. There need to be grassroots movements that are connecting with the police and being able to speak freely with the police about why this particular thing is not working, why this is dangerous for us in those ways. And so what we do at the Piece by Piece project is in the park, it's just down there, is have these circles that are similar, because it deals with a lot of the same issues, but then to branch them out into specific needs. So those specific needs can be filtered to the police, and the police can respond in the way in which they need to be responding. But one of the things I think that really is important is right now, like this project that we're launching up, Be Heard, it's called Be Heard for that particular reason.
Can you tell us about Be Heard?
So Be Heard is a PR campaign which is really about encouraging females, but specifically Caribbean females and African females, and addressing the needs and the reason why they are not engaging with the police and what the police need to be able to do to support them. So Be Heard is a specific campaign targeted at the Caribbean and African community. What do you need? This is your time to be heard. And it literally came out because that was the conversation, was the fact that we feel like we've been speaking for generations and are not yet being heard. Now this Be Heard project is literally about being heard, and not just tick-boxed heard, but heard and action then implemented. That's the only way that we move forwards. And the more voices, the more people speaking, the more people expressing their experiences, the more change is going to occur. But it's no longer time for us to wait for it to be our turn. It's our turn to speak now. So it's time to speak.
And something that I think is really important to raise here is about Clare's Law.
Okay.
And about the fact that the public need to understand that if they have concerns around somebody that's in their life, their partner, whoever, or they feel that something's not right, there is a way in which they can understand if there are concerns about violence to contact Bedfordshire Police, because there's a right to know, right to ask scheme through Clare's Law, which enables us to tell people if there's concerns about a particular individual, about a violent background, for example. And obviously there's the disclosure scheme as well, where we tell people if there are concerns around a person's history and there's risk to that victim, or there's risk to children as well. So I just thought I'd add that in because it's a really important point to raise. And if you don't mind me saying as well that actually, you know, I started on this point, and my thanks to Debs and Nine Red for actually allowing me into their circle, alongside a number of other individuals, because we only last week, didn't we, came to a listening circle with children at a nursery.
I have to clarify that it wasn't a listening circle, so it was on our listening circle day, but it was to do with the poetry together and the work that we're doing with the Lord Lieutenant and about, you know, raising the grassroots community and that kind of stuff. But it was really important for me that they attended to actually see the community, and especially when you're working with very, very young people that are like 2 to 4 years old that may already have had a negative interaction with the police, that if we can start people having positive interactions as early as possible, and for that reason, that was why I thought it was really important that they came into Jill Blower's nursery. We're doing a lot of projects and work over there, so you know, it's important, and they'll be visiting and coming back and doing some reading and different work with them over there as well. So it's as much as we are engaging in terms of like domestic and sexual violence, that is not the limit of what the engagement is. When we're talking about engaging across the community, what we want is that community engagement, because it is only by understanding the community in which they are policing that they can actually correctly police.
And how can listeners get involved with Line Red? How can they get involved with the listening circle?
Oh, literally, yeah. If you go to artundefined.com, that's the easiest way. If you go to artundefined.com, look at the website, you'll see all of our programs, our projects. It links out, so from there you can go to our therapy website and you can go to our arts website. But that literally tells you that's the landing page for everything that we do in the organisation. So it's just artundefined.com, because we use art as therapy.
Art Undefined.
Art Undefined.
Okay.
.com.
Great.
Yeah. So we do a range of different arts as therapy, arts as medicine, poetry as therapy. It's about focusing on well-being and prevention rather than cure when it comes to health. So we work with literature, arts and music, but we work with them as medicine. So it's in that kind of way, so that couples that with the counselling and those sorts of things. So we have a number and a range of different projects. So if you just have a look at the website, you can see you can get involved in anything. It's not just domestic and sexual violence, it's art, it's culture, it's literature, it's a whole range of different things. And it's our last session at the Pavilion next week. Sorry, that's me because it's in that direction. The Pavilion, we've got Raise Health and Wellbeing, so if you want to have like light, colour, sound, no hand massage, a whole range of holistic therapy.
Wow.
So that's what we do every week. We're having our last session of this year that's open to the public tomorrow, so if you want to come down into the Pavilion and have a free treatment or whatever, then you're entirely welcome.
So we're coming to the end of our show for today. Thank you, Zara and Deborah, for being here. We have really appreciate your views.
Thank you so much for inviting